Okay, we have an amazing amount of late arrivals here tonight. We begin with the share being dedicated by A.B. Spry and family for the schus that children should be accepted in yeshiva quickly and easily without heartache from the parents. We are sponsored also by Baruch Ian, Li'ilui Nishmas Esther Bas Yoni, Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Avram and Shmuel HaKayin. We also, I want to tell you that if you remember, Irving Fishbaum stepped up to the plate, and when we had no sponsors, he was the one to be the sponsor. After that, I got 3 more sponsors. So since Irving was like the pickle that opened up the pickle jar, I want to give him the privilege of sponsoring the Daf as well, in honor of his Bar Mitzvah Pasha, the 59th. 59 years ago, his Bar Mitzvah Pasha, Pasha Zekev, and we want to wish him that he should have Arichas Yomim V'Shanim, and also he wants us to learn for the Gesund of all Chayla Yisrael. We'll learn for Marshall's brother, Mordechai Ben Tzori Yehudas, and we'll also learn for my Shver, Avigdor Aryeh Ben Rivka. And people are rolling in now. Rolling. Saba is here. And Irving Fishbaum, Eddie Chazan, Chaim Kramer, Aaron Swade, Yisrael Fisher, Baruch Ian, Michal, Dr. Guy, Nachman Chapler, Berish Gesman, Rabbi Kranz, Shimon Klein, Richard Rosenzweig, David Helfgott, and Kalaloshin. And we are holding 3 lines from the top of Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. 3 lines from the top of Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Afilu hu ima b'mita. Even if he is with her in bed. Excuse me. Afilu hu ima b'mita. Even if when I said it in the Mishnah, I translated that inaccurately. Afilu hu is not going on him, but it's going on the get. Afilu hu ima b'mita. Even if he puts the get together in the bed with her, she's not divorced. So here the Gemara says, but that's provided that it's his bed. That's only if it was his bed. But she invested in a special bed for herself. If it was her bed, then Megareshes. Tanya Nami Hachi, Rebbe Eliezer, I'm a B'mita Shalah. If it was his bed, ain't a Megareshes. B'mita Shalah, but if it was her bed, Megareshes. So the Gemara says, but even if it's her bed, but it's standing on his land, on his bedroom, or Belita Shalah Megareshes, Kalev Shalokeach B'Rishus Meicheru. It's the utensils of the buyer in the property of the seller. And utensils of the buyer and the property of the seller, that's a big machlokes, whether Caleb shall kaina in the rishus of the meicher, if it's kaina. Shmami, now you're going to say from here, you want to prove from here that Caleb shall lekeach rishus meicher kana lekeach. Says no, the bed is a rishus b'fnei atzma because it's high 10 tefachim. So the bed is a separate domain. Like tzricha de gevaya asara. The bed is high 10 tefachim, and therefore it's a rishus b'fnei atzmai. But the legs rest on his property. Va'ika makam kare, the legs are sitting on his property. Says the Gemara, makam kare like kaptei inshe. The husband is not makbid on the place of the legs. In other words, he generously gives to her bed as her own domain. And therefore, if the get goes on her bed, then she would be divorced. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, if it goes l'soich cheka or l'soich kalta, If it goes into her lap or into her knitting basket, megareshes, she's divorced. Says the Gemara again, but isn't that Caleb shel loikeach b'rishus meicher? Amai Caleb shel loikeach b'rishus meicher, which is a controversial question. It's talking about where her knitting basket is slung across her body. And therefore, since it's part of her body, it's an extension of her body that is like herself. She's the basket is hanging from her body. Now, Reb Shimon Lakish adds a caveat that even if the basket is on the floor, but it's tied to her, it's considered an extension of her. Shimon Lakish Shura, if it's tied to Afal Pisha Ain't Tluya, even if it's not hanging from her, but it's on the floor, but if it's tied to her, it's considered an extension of her. Rav Ada Barava Amar Kigain Shoisa Kalta Muneches Labein Yarchaiseh. She's sitting, and the basket is between her legs. And the Gemara assumes that a person grants to someone the area between her legs. The husband was a merchant of baskets. So therefore, since the husband was a merchant of baskets, he doesn't mind that the basket is there because it helps advertise his wares more. And therefore, he relinquishes the space to her because it serves his purpose. As we welcome in Mark Frankel, who must be on the way and who is joining us on Facebook. Mark Frankel, better than nothing on Facebook. And Moshe Lehman is joining us now, as we welcome in also Marshall Castle. Marshall, we did learn for your brother, Mordechai ben Sorry, Yehudis, and Mark sends regards, Marshall.
Right back at him.
He says he doesn't need it. He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
Hey, you are terrible.
Like people are finally arriving over here, I'm telling you.
That's because I came out.
Yeah. Rabbi Yochanan says, Mikaim Cheka Kanila. Well, that's obvious. The place of her lap is acquired by her, and Mikam Kalta Kanila, the place of her basket. And I assume that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that even if the basket is not tied to her or hanging from her, but he relinquishes the place of her pocketbook, of her knitting basket. Amar Rava, my time to Rabbi Yochanan. What's the reason of Rabbi Yochanan? Lefisha ein adam makpid loy al mekayim cheka, the place of her lap, loy al mekayim kalta, and not the place of the basket. Tanya nami hachi. Zorkala l'sei cheka, if he throws it into her lap, or l'sei kalta, into her basket, or l'sei chol davar shehu kikalta, or like anything that's like a basket, into her pocketbook, harizum megareshes. Kol davar shehu kikalta l'sei mai, anything like her basket, what does that come to include? L'asiyei taska da'achal batamre. She carried with her a personal pouch where she gnashed on dates, and he throws it into that personal pouch, then she is divorced. Okay, for those that are just joining us, 3 lines into the wide lines, and Ayin Ches Amid Aleph, just getting underway for this Wednesday night when we have a exciting agenda with a very special Chumash here coming up. Now, here, because he's embarrassed, he says to her, "Amala kinsi shtar chayv zeh." Take this promissory note. It really was a get, but he was embarrassed to look her in the eye. So he says, take this promissory note. She saw a document sticking out from his back pocket. And as the Gemara will say, he stuck his hip to her, and she took it. So that's considered like he gave it to her with his hip movement. And then she read it, Koira. She read it, and to her shock, she saw it was a divorce. Varihu Gita. Ain't a get, it's not a get, until he tells her, here's your divorce. Now, this is a chiddush that the Tanna Kama holds. We'll see that there's an argument about this, but this is a chiddush that the Tanna Kama holds, that he could tell her after it gets into her hand that it's a get, and that's enough. Not everybody's going to hold that way. Nosan biyoda v'hi yeshana. If he put it into her hand while she was asleep, niura, she woke up, Korah, and she reads it, Vari Gita, ain't a get, it's not a get, unless he says, ha gite, but he could again say it after it was already in her possession. Says the Gemara, well, is that so simple? First of all, the way it sounds like she took it out of his back pocket. Taking it out of the back pocket, that shouldn't be good. It says, V'nasanla, he has to give it to her. Ki amalo hagitech may have it. What does it help if he says, here's your get? It's like he tells her to take the get from the ground. That's no good because he never gave it to her. Take that get from the ground. He has to give it to her. If she took it out of his back pocket, he never gave it to her. He slung it behind him. Says, so what? That's no good. He has to give it to her. He tilted his hip in her direction. Then she took it. That's considered like giving it to her. Take this promissory note. If he put it behind him, and we're going to learn that he nudged his hip in her direction. Karasa, she read it. V'hariyu Gita ain't a get until he tells her hagitech. But the Divrei Rebbe holds that he could say, "Here's your get" after it's already in her hand. But Reb Shimon Lazar doesn't agree with that. Reb Shimon Lazar, I'm a get. He has to take it back from her, and give it again, saying the hagitech after it's already in her possession is no good. If he put it in her hand, and she's asleep, Neura, she woke up, the Kaira, and she reads it, and again, Divrei Rebbe, that's Rebbe who says that he could say it after it's already in her hand. Reb Shimon Lazar says again, he has to take it back, and give it to her again, and they need to teach it both in the case where she took it from his, where he gave it as a promissory note, and also in the case where he gave it to her when she was asleep. Where she was awake, there she was, when she got it the first time, she was a person who was roy to be divorced because she was awake. Where she was asleep, so she wasn't even divorceable at that time. The la basa grusha, he maybe Reb Shimon Lazar that you can't say it after the fact, here's your get, but you have to take it back to her. V'yit my baha, in the case where she was sleeping, I might say only baha kam Reb Shimon Law, so that's no good. Ava bahach, where she was awake, we need to have both cases. I'm a Rava. Cause of law get. Remember that we said that her chotzer could only get the get for her if it's mishtameres midata. It has to be guarded by her, or by her fence, or by her alarm. But if you put it in a maidservant's hand, and the maidservant is guarding it, that's not good, because it's not mishtameres by her, it's being mishtameres by the maidservant. So Amar Rava, cause of the get, if he wrote her a get, v'nosna biyad avda yoshan, and he put the get into her servant's sleeping servant, umishamartai, and she's guarding the sleeping servant, so then the servant is her courtyard, and she's guarding the servant when he's asleep, how is that get? But near, if the Eved is awake, ain't a get. That's a chotzer that's guarded not by her, but by the Eved. Says the Gemara, Yoshin Mishamartai, how is a get? But if the Eved is sleeping and she's watching the Eved, it's a get. But why? A Eved is mobile, and a chotzer amaleches is not kaina. A chotzer that's mobile is not kaina. Says the Gemara, but why? How Yoshin Mishamartai is a get? Amai chotzer malechesi. The chotzer maleches loikana. Says the Gemara, v'chi toime Yoshin shani. But maybe when the Eved is sleeping, he's not mobile. V'amar Rava, this is a shas yesod, kol she'ilu mahalech loikana. If the person is moving, it wouldn't be a kinyan. I made v'yoshiv, if he's stationary or sitting, also loikana. Says the Gemara, it's talking about bekafis. V'ilchas of bekafis. If the Eved is sleeping and tied, so that it doesn't have a potential to be mobile, so then that's a chotzer that she's watching, and then she would be divorced. Okay, we welcome in Gedalia Engel, who's just joining us, Stephen Holtzman, who's just joining us, Mo Kushner, and Shalom Fogel. As we get down to business over here, a lot of late arrivals tonight, as we're holding 9 lines from the bottom of Daf Ayin Ches at the new Mishnah. 9 lines from the bottom of Daf Ayin Ches at the new Mishnah. Now this is a famous case all over Shas. She was standing in the public domain on 13th Avenue, on Central Avenue, on Main Street. Vizar Kala on the 9. And he threw it to her. So then, Karav law, if it's closer to her, Megareshes. Karav law, if it's closer to him, then it never went out of his Rishus, and Megareshes. Machzal machza, if it's 50-50, so then it's a suffix. Megareshes, ve'ena megareshes. She's divorced that she can't marry a kohen anymore, but she's not divorced that if he dies, she's going to need chalitza. V'chein linyan kedushin. And the same thing is true if he throws kedushin. If it's close to her, she's engaged. If it's close to him, she's not. If it's midway, then it's a suffix. V'chein linyan achayv. How does this come in a chayv? So here, Marshall owes, who's the unlucky person? Marshall owes Berish money. And Berish says, throw it to me. So if it's closer to Marshall and then it gets stolen, Marshall is still responsible. If it's closer to Berish and then it gets stolen, then Marshall is off the hook. If it's midway, they split it. And that's what the Gemara says. Amalei Bal Chayvai, Berish says to Marshall, Zroikli Chayvi, throw me the $1 million that you owe me. V'zorkuloi, and he throws it to him. Karav Lemilva, if it was closer to Berish and something happened to it, Zocha Milva. So then the Berish already got paid and Marshall's off the hook. Karav Leloiva, if it was closer to Marshall and something happened to it, Aloiva Chayiv. Marshall is still chayiv to pay him the $1 million, right? Machze al machze, if it's midway, then shneim yachloiku, then they split 500,000, 500,000. Berish says, easy come, easy goes. Now,
He's only getting one.
and even that's not real. It's a bad business, Berish, a bad business.
I just printed this. It's just special for Berish.
Right. Now, as we welcome in Chaim Lerner, we're at the Gemara on the bottom of Ayin Ches Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the bottom, just getting underway on a beautiful Wednesday night with a lot to come. Heichi Dami Korev Law, Heichi Dami Korev Law. What constitutes closer to her that she's divorced, closer to him that she's not divorced? Amarav Arba Amas Shaloi, if it's within her 4 Amas, Zeu Korev Law. Arba Amas Shaloi, if it's within his 4 Amas, then she's not divorced. Zeu Korev Law. Heichi Dami Mechzel Mechzel. What's half and half? Amrav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Kagan Shayu Shneim Oimdim Ba'arba Amas. They were both in the same Arba Amas. Says the Gemara, well, let's see who got there first. Because the one who got there first, that would be they took possession of the place. That they arrived at the same split time. We don't say that the same split time is possible. And even if it is, the Mishnah wouldn't speak about such an unlikely case. That she has 4 amas and he has 4 amas, and the get lands partially by him and partially by her. Says, well, that can't be the case. Because if that's the case, if the get was partially by him, they will surely not be divorced, because the get has to go out of his possession entirely. It can't be Ogid Bey at all. The get Yoitz Ma'aba Shaloi La'aba Mashallah. Says the Gemara, that can't be the case, because we said it's a suffix Megareshes, Vain Megareshes. But if the get is partially in his 4 amas, then it's definitely not a get for Agid Gabay. So rather, the Gemara says, what's the case of Suffolk Karav Law, Suffolk Karav Law, where there's 2 contradicting edus? El Rab of Rab Yosef Dimrei Travayu Hacha B'Shtei Kitei Edem Askinan. You have Irving and Saba that say that the get was closer to her, and you have Stephen and Mo that say that the get was closer to him. That's Suffolk Karav Law, Suffolk Karav Law. El Rabba v'Rabbi Yosef Travayu Hacha B'Shtei Kitei Edem Askinan. Achas Meres. Stephen and Mo say that it was Karav Law, closer to him. V'achas Meres Karav Law, and Saba and Irving say that it was closer to her. So there, that's the Suffolk. Rabbi Yochanan says it doesn't have to do with Daled Amas. The main thing is who could protect it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Karav Lo Shaninu Afilu Meyama. Even if she's 100 amas away, but it's closer to her and it's within her power to guard it. V'Karav Lo Shaninu, and closer to him is Afilu Meyama, but it's closer to him and he could guard it. Heichi dami mechzel mechza, where they both could guard it, or neither could guard it. Amar Rav Sham bar Abba l'didim mifreshal minei Rabbi Yochanan, hu yachal l'shaimra v'hi eini yachal l'shaimra. If he could guard it but she can't, zel karv lai. He yachal l'shaimra, she could guard it, v'hu eini yachal l'shaimra, zel karv la. Shneim yachal l'shaimra, or shneim ein yachal, both could guard it, or both ein can not guard it exclusively. Not that they can't guard it at all, because then that certainly wouldn't be a good get. That's mechzel mechza. Amru Rabbanan kamei de Rabbi Yochanan mishmei de Rabbi Yonasan. So the Rabbanan said before Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Yonasan, Hachi Amar Amru Rabbanan kamei de Rabbi Yochanan mishmei de Rabbi Yonasan Hachi. They said that Rabbi Yonasan in Bavel said this pshat, and Rabbi Yochanan was impressed. Amar Yodin Chavrim Bavloi Lefrushay Ki'aytaima. Our colleagues in Bavel know to explain the Mishnah this way. And indeed, Tanya Nami Hachi, Rabbi Lazar Amikoshu Karavla Malai, if it's closer to her from him, Uba Kelev Vinotlai Eina Megareshes. So the Gemara wonders, what do you mean? Does the get have to last? Eina Megareshes, Kalechi Tinter of a Tazel, if she doesn't watch her get afterwards, it ruins the divorce? El Lav Hachi Kamen, Kol She Karev La Melai. But V'ilu Ba Kelev Vinotlai, if a dog would come and take it, only he could guard it. So even if it's physically closer to her, but from her vantage, she can't stop it from being taken by a dog, but he could, so then ain't a megresh. She's not divorced. Amalei Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda Shinina, in order for her to be divorced, it has to be close enough kitei sheteshuach v'titlenu. It has to be close enough that she could bend down and take it. But even then, don't render it a good divorce until it's put in her hand. You shouldn't render a divorce. Adamati gita liyad. Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi. Have a uvda hachi. There was an incident where the get was put in close enough that she could bend down and take it. Well, it was close enough that she could bend down and take it, but it wasn't put in her hand. The husband died before a second get was given, and they didn't say it was ruled a complete get, and therefore she needed chalitza. She couldn't just go out and marry. If it would be a complete get, she wouldn't even need chalitza. Now, the chein le'inyan kedushin, and the same din applies to kedushin. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, legittin amru. They said this rule closer to her, it's hers, closer to him, it's his, for gittin, but v'loy ledavarachim, but nothing else. It says, well, how could you say nothing else? It says that the halakha is that way for kedushin too. So the Gemara says, yeah, kedushin, yeah, because we have when we'll get to the next Masechta, we're going to use this every other sugya. By kedushin, there's a hekish between gerishin and kedushin, because it says v'yatzav ha'isa, makish yitzia get lahavaya to kedushin. So the Gemara says shani hasim d'chsiv v'yatzav ha'isa makish yitzia tavaya. But the Gemara says the same thing is true for a chayiv. Eisvei says the Gemara v'chein linyan chayiv. We said the same thing is true for a chayiv. Zorik, where where Beresh says to Marshall, Zroik li chayvi, throw me my debt, v'zarkoloi, Karav lamalva, if it was closer to Beresh, Zacha, and if something happens, it's Beresh's liability. There's a change in Gersa over here. Yeah, so Karv Lamalve Zacha Hamalve. That's the correct gear says. You see on the left hand side, Ulay Tzarech Loimer Hamalve. So Karv Lamalve, if it was closer to Beresh, Zacha Hamalve. And if something happens to it, Marshall's off the hook. Karv Laleive, if it's closer to Marshall, Aleive Chai. Mechtal Mechza Shneim Yachleiku. So how could you say it's only by Gittin? We see that we say it's the same thing by a debt. Says the Gemara, it's not the same thing by a debt unless Beresh dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Hachabamayaskinun to Amalei Zroikli Chayvi V'tipoter. Here Beresh told Marshall, because Marshall wasn't so about throwing $1 million. So he says, throw it to me and you'll be exonerated. Ihachi says, what's the Kiddush? Like tzvicha de amalei zraikli chayvi b'toiras gittin. He says, throw it to me and it'll have the same law as a get. So the Gemara says, so he said it has the same law as a get. So if it's closer to Beresh, then Marshall is off the hook. What's the Chiddush? Says the Gemara, the Chiddush is, Mao the same motzi amalei meshata anibach. Nah, I was just joshing with you. What I meant is, throw it to me and you'll be divorced from me. You'll get rid of me. But I didn't mean that it should be like a get, that if something happens, I didn't mean that. Kamash Malan, that Beresh can't make that claim. Now here's an interesting case. Amr Avchis, the get biyada, Chatzkel gives Sarah get, but a Meshicha biyadai. But he has, the get is like a yo-yo. The get has a string attached to it. Literally strings attached. And he gives her the get, but he's still holding one end of the string. So im yochalin naska yuleviu etzla, if the string is strong enough that he could pull the get out of her hand and bring it back, then ain't a megreshes. Because it has to be a creases, a final severance. If it's still attached to his hand and he could pull it back, it's not a final severance. But vimlav, if he would pull the string, it would rip and it wouldn't bring back the get, then megareshes. My timer. Why in the first case is she not divorced? Because ba'inon krisos, it has to be a complete severance, and if he could pull it back, v'leka, it's not a complete severance. Now we're going to stop here, and the night is young, as we welcome in Nathan Langner. I'm sorry, March Frankel, Nathan Langner, I'm going to be pushing off, and those people who listen to Facebook, to Kolosh, and I'm just signing out to retune in for the Chumash here.